Well, today is going to be a little two-part thing, pretty much an add-on video, but we're going to try talk a little bit about bedding and about stalks. What I'm going to try to illustrate with this big pig here is we've all heard the old story of the rabbit and the hare. We've all been given the advice that slow and steady wins the race. We've all been, but nowhere does that become more apparent than in the bedding. There's a bunch of places where I've done bedding on this stalk. For instance, there's one up here you can't even see, but it is 1.25 inches wide by 3-inch long section. I've hollowed out and milled out the center section of this stalk and filled it completely full of epoxy. Minimal amount of epoxy and 7.5 bird shot. We're finally going to go after this and try to make it shoot. I'm been shooting some 50 BMGs. This is part of the lineup, and this gun has never been, because it's a fiberglass stock and it was not 5 inches wide at the front. I had to cobble and build up and bolt in and chow out, and it's got another set of bolts running through the bottom. Got Delrin rails here on the sides. I've mucked this back, got this as light as I dare go before it starts to flex. Now I've been bedding in this action, and this morning I was just picking some of this stuff out of here, and some of it's coming clean, some of it is leaving chunks. That one came off. There's some down in there that left chunks. I wanted to show you a little bit about how to clean out. I use silly putty for this anymore. I buy silly putty in big blocks so that I don't have to stint on it. I used to use modeling clay, but I ran into situations where some of this big stuff that I do is a little bit icky-picky, because a lot of it's chromoly. It doesn't even come out in stainless for whatever, well, for reasons of strength and for reasons of their own. So I end up working with stuff sometimes that tends to rust. This is where air and silly putty are your friend. We can blow stuff out, tape, silly putty, stuff, clean up. It's amazing how quickly you can clean some of this stuff up. So now I'm going to move some of this out of the way. All I really wanted to show you on this is that I finally got this bedded to fit everywhere. Still got to mill this section out. I just left it proud. It's ugly. But we've got our stuff in here. Not that you care about this so much, but there we go. That's out of the way. Also, on here, when it comes apart, you got a bunch of stuff. Oh, there's not a bunch. Only 3 chunks didn't come out here at the bottom. But again, this is where your schnozzle is your friend. You can come to these chunks like this. Whoops. Whoops. Blowing stuff. Gotta get it. Blows them out far enough that you can get a hold of them, or blurs them all over the room if that's what you prefer. But the biggest thing, whoops, there, that one blew all over the room, because obviously that's what I preferred. Excuse me. So we can blow these out, we can clean this up, get this out of our way, because what I really just wanted to show you was that particular stalk has been bedded on now 4 different times. Now I'm pretty much done with it. I don't know that I'm going to do any more. But now I'm going to show you what I'm doing for another little project going here on the side. Whoops. First I've got to tear this out. I'm getting ahead of myself here. Oh, I'm not. I already had it figured out. That's the problem with thinking while I'm thinking, or thinking while I'm talking. I had this all prepped out ahead of time. And this is the nice thing. It's another little thing I want to throw in here as an add-on. I go through a lot of Brownell's resin. These are the resin containers. And when I've got the temperature up like it is now in here, 75-ish degrees, I run it at 25:1 by weight. There are times, like when I cool it down in here during the summertime, when it's better. And to do this, that was point on my scale right now. That little bit I just squirted comes in at 22.5 grains. You clear this, go 22.5 grains times, one weight is 25%. 5.62 grains is what that shows. Now I turn around and add that back to my 22.5. And then I have a reading here that's exact. I'm trying to talk while I'm out of the camera here. I happen to be popping this up to 28. Just a small amount. Okay, so there we have just over 28 grains total. So that's quick and easy. I'm sorry to make this, but as I said, it's an add-on video. If you don't like it, don't watch it. So I come back with my little bitty mixer thing here of mixable. I just want to show how, in this particular case, I'm not doing very much. I don't like that for mixing. I'll take something like this for mixing. What I'm doing is just the tiniest amount of material. I'm not used to working with this heavy stuff so much, and that's not 50 BMG there. That piece of it is heavy enough that I have to slow everything down just a little and go, I don't want to be dropping. And while we're here, we might as well talk a little bit about this customer's gun. This came in only because we've got a stock maker out there that makes a real pretty stock. But this poor fellow got this new stock, and it is pretty. I'm not going to say anything bad about it except that. Let's see if I can get some focus changes here a little bit. I wonder if that's not too bright. I think that was too bright. So anyway, this is a nice stock and everything. But the guy that builds it doesn't really know what he's building. He doesn't approach the problems. The poor guy bought his super cool gun for X amount of dollars. Very expensive rifle. And didn't like the stock that came on it, so he ordered up and bought this other really cool stock. And there's a few things that you're looking for in a stock. You don't want to radically change the balance of the gun. So you want to keep the balance right. And if you're a shotgun, you learn that that's really important. But what's important on these is how does it shoot? And what are the things that make it shoot? The things that make a stock shoot are its stiffness, I'll call it its resonance, but it's not its resonance. Everything has resonance. A tree swaying in the wind is resonant. But that's not consistent, and the tree is always growing, so that's always changing. The point is that you take this thing, like a dog grabs a bone, and you go, boom, and it shakes around. This wobbles back and forth back here. This flops up and down and back and forth here. All shaking like a pit bull on a coon, and both ends are flapping, both ends are flopping. This is the weakest area of the stock right here, and they hogged a big hole out of it. The guy that built this stock didn't even reinforce this area. He didn't do anything in here. I've had tutorials in the past as how I put chassis in there, and some have aluminum through there. It's a known problem amongst the known stock makers. But this guy has just found out how to work with composites and how to make a nice light fiberglass or Kevlar, or probably in this case carbon fiber shell. He probably used an epoxy, and he made a nice shell. Didn't thicken this area at all, didn't reinforce this area at all, cut it wide open, and then slobbered some pillars in here, which are probably designed, they got little notches so they don't shoot loose, and they're probably designed in his mind to resist compression. Well, I don't want to pick on his ideas, but that doesn't do anything for anybody. Who cares about resisting compression? You know, resisting compression doesn't mean squat in the real world. What's going to compress? In the real world, the problem that we have here is that this particular stock can't shoot. Came to me, first of all, because he bought this cool new stock to make his gun shoot better, and unfortunately for him, it didn't shoot as good as it did before. And it didn't shoot particularly good before. So, I'm going to show you something here because we've got time on this video. And we have to be careful lest this be called some kind of a picking on dude situation, because it's not. It has nothing to do with dude or with whatever. It has to do with my ongoing quest for why does one stock shoot and another one don't? This happens to be one of the ones that don't. Therefore, it becomes one of the problems we're talking about. So, we turn this thing around so the name don't show. But I gotta keep it straight enough up and down that the stock will fit on here. Now, as I said, I've already approached the top side. What I told him I can do with this is bet it for consistency. We've burned down just a fuzz around those pillars up here at the top. Just a little ring, just enough to get it to bite on the top of the pillar. I've cut out this section right here, as I've shown you before, so that the solid epoxy goes back and bears against the sniper fill. That's another thing. It's got this little gob of sniper fill here, maybe 3/4 of an inch across, to hold the pillar in place. Pretty obvious that it doesn't do anything. You know, there's no thought given to why the pillar is in there. What we're trying to accomplish with this is to keep the whole barreled action from ripping out of the stock and pulling the pillars with it. Pillars have been shooting loose for years. And the other thing was that the way this thing was inletted, it was rocking back and forth. It was very loose, and that's completely normal. It's not designed to be shot right off the naked inlet. But all of that aside, you got a situation where let's move this ahead a little bit. I'm always scared to clamp on these stupid carbon fiber barrels, even though they're so strong they don't blah 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 blah. Yeah, they're carbon fiber strong. So anyway, here we've got the floor plate. Basically, all we need to do here is I had some Kiwi neutral shoe polish on here. I bushed it out. Now I'm taking my finger oil and put a little bit more oily on here. And now we take this tiny amount, because this goes back to what I've been trying to illustrate from the start here. What are we trying to achieve? What are we doing here? One of the first things as I was assessing this, why it wouldn't shoot, was that I put this floor plate in. I'll do this. I'll just stick it in there. And with it in place, I started playing with the screws, and I'd run that down to where it touches, run this down to where it touches. There, the floor plate is sitting in there. Now, the problem is that as I tighten this, I'm going to hold this down a little bit. I'm going to back these both off a little. Now it's bedded, it's dropped, it's laying on its bedding surfaces. I'm not going to try illustrating, I'm just going to say that I can see this, whether you can see it there or not. When I tighten this with my fingers, come on, I have to get an actual wrench. I don't know if you can see that or not, but I'm not going to go off on it. I'm just going to use that to illustrate the fact that we've got bad surfaces here. Either the pillar's sitting a little proud, or it's just a crap inletting job, or, I mean, it fits there. Everything fits okay. It's just so nasty. It's just so nappy. The fits are so bad that you tighten this screw and this back end walks up and down, tighten this screw and this end walks up and down. Everything's clear through here. It's the surfaces. And in reality, all I'm doing with this little gob of epoxy right here, this tiny wee little bit of epoxy, is we're going to dab a little around the top of these pillars and we're going to set the floor plate in there. And all we are achieving, we have one singular goal. And it goes back to what I was saying earlier about slow and steady wins the race. I did the top side, and I did some color, and I did some of this, and I did some of that so that you can't see it. I disappeared it. Down here, I'm just going to go clear because I am using a truly minuscule amount. All I am doing, and the reason this is important is because you guys, when you first start out bedding, there's all these tutorials that show you how to do the whole thing at once. Number one, that's stupid because it requires that you bolt it all together and bend. Just picture with me what happened here. When I tightened this front screw down, it picked the back up. Now the way it came, the stock came with instructions that you're supposed to tighten it to 50 inch-pounds all the way around. But that's correct. Well, there's another term for correct in most cases. Bullshit. If you can't blind them with your brilliance, baffle them with bullshit. And that's unfortunately how 90% of the world works. Baffling with bullshit. So we don't want to do that. If we're going to do anything, here's a situation where a guy paid hundreds and hundreds of dollars for a stock to make his dream gun. He's got a hog hunt coming up or something coming up here in the next month. And goes out to shoot it and bring hand loads and all ready to go and big dreams, and gets out there and finds out that not only does the new stock not blow away his old stock as far as accuracy, which of course is the reason he bought it, because the package as it came didn't shoot all that well, but it shoots even worse than it did when he started. Which is what brings him to the point of bringing it to me and saying, did I really screw up here? Did I make a major boo-boo ordering this out? And what would, this is an expensive stock. Why, how could it not work? Well, the answer as to how it could not work is that most things in this world are not designed to work. They're designed to look cool and sell to people. I learned that with fishing lures a long time ago. There's like 3 colors and 5 actions to trigger the fiscus to bite. You don't need those hundreds of colors and hundreds. You need your darks for dark days and your lights for light days and your darks for night, and you need a little of this and you need a little of that. But what you don't need is all kinds of pearls and prisms and colors and moonlights and then you need, if you're going to do deep water, you need to do blues and greens for deep water and recognize that the reds and the yellows disappear clear up at the surface. And this is the science of fishing. Well, the science of stock making has some rules also. When a guy pays big money, to get something cool to fix his problem, and it doesn't fix his problem. So what we're going to do, I explained to him the problems that I have with the stiffness. I could go on and on and on about the way this stock's not stiff enough to react properly to shoot. This ain't going to be no quarter-minute gun. But, of course, with the carbon fiber barrel, it was never going to be a quarter-minute gun. So there is that side of it. So what we're going to do here, I said I'll bet it for rigidity 10%. Won't really change the rigidity much, but mainly I'm betting it for stability. What this will allow him to do, because the other thing you'll find with a stock that's just been put together is that there are certain things that it doesn't do well. It doesn't keep moisture out well. Solvents get down in. It's like an open wound because it's not all custom tight, sealed up, healed up. So in this case, we're not going to do any of that. I bet for a variety of reasons, very rarely for cosmetic reasons, most of all for function reasons, and in this case, I'm at a critical part here. Be careful not to get any air in this, because this has actually got so what we're betting this for in this case, just to let you know, is something I call consistency, which simply means that you can take the handle off and on, you can clean out the mung, you can come in from a hunt and wipe this thing down, you can come in from a hunt, tear it down, get the moisture surfaces, the moisture out of all the interior surfaces, and put it back together and nobody gets hurt. Put it back together with no pain. Okay, now I'm going to shut the camera off while I set this thing down in here, because I just recognized that I have to pull the floor plate off. I forgot to pull the spring off of here, and it's going to be popping, and that would mean I would have to tape it, and I don't want to do all that. I don't want to put any stresses on this. I want to drop this in here absolutely stress-free, just let it sit, pop it back out. And now when we tighten it down together, we haven't stiffened, we haven't approached the problems here, but it will tighten down together completely stress-free, and I did it in two parts. This was put in under gravity. Now the floor plate will be put in under gravity, and the two parts will both have perfectly stress-free bedding surfaces to tighten it back together. And that's all we're accomplishing. Consistency.